All right, here we are. Special edition of the Captain Marty podcast. It's taking place here in Wanchese, North Carolina at Bayliss Boatworks. We're here today. I got Captain Marty here. I've got Mr. John Bayliss here, and I've got Mr. Mike Merritt here to pay tribute and to honor a captain that we lost recently back in March. And his name was Mr. Charlie Griffin. And these gentlemen right here, some of those that knew Charlie probably better than most, and we felt like it was necessary to do this. So, Captain Marty, I want to go around the table. Let's talk about who you guys are.
All right, thank you, Justin. And, these two guys here, I think more people know them than will ever know me. But we have two of my dearest old friends, my old captain, my old boss, my old deer hunting partner, Captain Mike Merritt. We all know him as Bubblegum. John Bayliss and I we've done a lot of things together, and we all really love Charlie Griffin. And, before we get started into the story itself, Bubblegum, tell us a little bit about you and how you know me, how we came to know each other in the fleet at Oregon Inlet.
Oh, man. Well, I started before John and you ever come around. I was fortunate that I fell in love with it fishing and started right here in Wanchese, right down the road, just a little bit. That would have been 1968.
And you're still fishing.
Yeah. And still fishing and getting ready to take over command of a brand new 60-footer, and we'll keep on going.
And John, of course, John and I go way back. A lot of people know that story. I was the mate on the Tar Heel, the original Tar Heel that Ricky Scarborough built. Mm-hmm. And John, you want to tell how you gave me the battlefield promotion, and we still, despite the fact that I crashed that boat, I blew that boat up, I think we still talk. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, you and I met each other in 75 or 76?
75, the summer of 75.
And so Marty and I both started in Hatteras.
That's right.
And I was working for Emery Dillon, and you were with Jules on Fiesta.
And the first year I was on the Cordialo with Captain Tony Tomasi.
Oh yeah,
that was a bad. But that was
somehow we became like best buddies.
We sure did.
We were both getting into the fishing thing. Hatteras was like, in our view at that time, that was the epicenter of all great fishing there was to be, and marlin fishing and everything else. Oregon Inlet didn't even cross our mind. Mm-hmm. And so later we found out there was something even more important up here at Oregon Inlet. That it was we moved up here.
Yeah.
And we had more. We both kind of fell in love with the bill fishing, and there were white marlin up here a little bit more often than there were in Hatteras. And although I love Hatteras and I loved the 3 years that we were fishing there as mates, but then we came up to Oregon Inlet, and I fished a couple years with Sam Stokes. And after that, here comes the Tar Heel. Ricky builds that boat. I'm 23, and I begged Marty to be mate the first year. I think you hooked me up with your brother-in-law, right? First.
That's right.
And then he left, and then I got Jim. He was the next one, and then finally got to the really good one, you and I.
That's when everything changed. And, of course, John, you've been at it ever since, but you stepped out of the charter boating, and you eventually morphed into boat building. We just did your 22nd year here at Bayliss Boatworks, right? Anniversary?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, a lot of people, Bubblegum, you'll get this one little story about John and Hatteras. I was telling this the other day.
Marty, try and stick to the truth.
This is pretty much,
it's going to be hard for you.
But you were on the early bird with Emery Dillon.
Yes.
And that boat was like a submarine. I mean, it was wet.
Bad.
It was really wet.
We had an 11-knot cruise.
11?
11.
Wow.
11.
Anyway, but I remember being on, I think I might have been on, I was freelancing that day. It was a bigger, faster boat. And as we were going by the early bird, John had full foul weather gear on, was sitting back at the stern rigging baits. And I was sitting on a cooler and rigging baits, and about every other wave would come across the stern of that boat. He'd just shake it off and keep rigging. And then he'd get up and get sick, and my captain looked at me and said, "See that boy over there? he ain't never going to amount to nothing.
I was thinking the same thing. Probably at that moment, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I had made a terrible mistake.
And I remember coming up in those 2 years, Hatteras was more laid back, easier going. Oregon Inlet, it became a job.
Man, it was so cool in Hatteras back then, though, man. Because
I remember going down there, and it was like, I learned to rig a squid watching Bobby Scarborough.
He was
rig him up down
tied
there,
up right next to us.
Right next to Sonny Briggs. That
and
was
then Buddy Hooper was on the other side, and then Chip graduated from Emory, and he started running the temperature. So it was Bobby, Emory, Buddy Hooper, and Bull together, and then Chip, and then he had Chris Hickman and Bill Hogan, working for him. It was just a great time to be alive down there.
Justin, we could do a whole day on just this.
We're
going to move on, but I do want to say one thing about bubblegum too. We make it like we always used to do in Hatteras. We'd make a little money, and as soon as a blow day came along, we'd head to Virginia Beach or Norfolk to spend all the money that we had made. But one day I went up there with a fellow, maybe one of you guys will remember, his name was Redbeard Timmy. And him and Kenny Johansson were...
Timmy Pierce.
Yeah, Pearson, I think it was.
Yeah.
But they were freelance professional mates. And anyway, we got up there and we were walking the dock at Oregon Inlet. And I walked down behind the billfisher, which was the Warren O'Neill billfisher. And down in the bills was this greasy, covered in grease and dirty shirt with the motor all tore down. And we said, hey, we're come up from Hatteras, and you offered me a job on the spot. Remember that?
I do. I think I scared you off, though, or something, because you never came back.
Yeah, I did. But anyway, so we have a past.
I wish you'd have gotten a picture of that, because I swear
you never seen him in a greasy shirt?
No, I think he could change oil in a white tuxedo and come out ready to go to the prom. Right?
That's because I learned that you didn't have to get all that damn dirty to do something.
That's right. Well, anyway, our past, we've been friends. We've hunted together, we've fished together, and we've done all kinds of things. But we're here today to talk a little bit about Charlie Griffin, who followed right in just behind us. And Charlie Griffin and Chad Dunn lost their life tragically on the bar at Oregon Inlet somewhere during the night of March the 2nd. And that's... we're not really here to talk about what happened, because we'll never know. We'll never know. No. But we can talk a little bit about Griff. And, of course, Chad was his mate. Chad also is when he was a little boy, he and my daughters were the same age. We did a lot of things together. But I don't have the stories about Chad like I have about Griff. And, so we're going to share a little of those stories. John, you were the victim of you may or may not know that, but when I was the mate on the Tar Heel and Charlie Griffin was the mate on the Honey, I think I got that right.
With Rudolph.
With Rudolph.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to back up. I was the mate on the Fighting Lady. I had followed John Bayliss, who was the mate for
Sam
for 2 years, and then Mike Bennett was the mate for 6 years ahead of you, right? On the Fighting Lady. So that was a hard act to follow, Mm-hmm. So we got invited. When I was wintering in the Florida Keys, I met a boat, he was a charter boat captain named Mike Miller down there. And Mike said, Marty, he says, I want you to come down and fish the Captain Anderson's tournament in Panama City. I've never caught a marlin. He had an old Harker's Island boat. And so I was looking for any excuse to go on a little road trip. And Griff was on the Honey. So he said, can you bring somebody with you? I said, well, there's this guy, Charlie Griffin. I can bring him. And so
I remember that now.
And the way they fished down there, you left the dock on Thursday night at midnight, and you steam. This boat made about 11 knots. You steam all the way. It would just get on a plane, steam all the way out to daylight, and then put out your baits. Fish Friday from daylight to dark. It was like 15 hours of fishing. Then you laid out there 70 miles offshore with a sea anchor, and the adventures that happened at night were pretty worth telling too. And then fished all the next day till dark. And Charlie Griffin was just all that. We flew down there. We brought tackle. We brought a cooler full of baits, and we were just all into it. So we got down there, and when we got on the first, now this is all with the old style, no dink rigs, big reels, rods and reels. And we got out there, and on the first day, we caught a sailfish right off the bat. Boat had never caught hardly any billfish. And then about we'd take turns. One guy would get up on the bridge and be the captain, and then me and Mike Miller would be the mate, and then we'd rotate around, and I'd get up on the bridge and I'd be the captain, and we were having a lot of fun, you know. So all of a sudden, we look behind the boat, and there's this big old 400-pound blue marlin chasing us, and before when Charlie had rigged some squid and some Spanish mackerel, one of the guys on the dock was watching him rig up a big split-tail mullet, and he said, "Hey, Charlie," he said, "we never sew them mullets up to troll them." And Charlie said, "You don't sew them up?" He said, "No, we just hook them through the lip with a hook and drag them like that." And he said, "We did that, and a marlin come up there and licked that thing right up and commenced to flipping." That's the way they talk down there. So, but we caught that blue marlin, and we got him in the boat. The first one in the boat was 40 years old, never caught a blue marlin. And then at night, lots of big adventures. But the thing is, the next day we went 5 for 5 on white marlin on 80 international on heavy tackle. Didn't miss a single fish. And at the end of the day, at the end of the first day, we sent the blue marlin and the sailfish back to the dock on a fast boat that was going to shore for the night. In the process of pushing that blue marlin over the side, it had a leader around it, and the hook, when the weight fell over the boat, a hook stab went in one of our angler's legs deeply. And we either had to cut that hook out in the middle of the ocean or go in and not make it back in time for our second day. And we did cut the hook out. The next day, and that's another story, but the next day we went 5 for 5, put them on a stringer and sent them in. We had no idea if we'd won the tournament. So
what about the blue marlin? Where's he?
Oh, he went in on the first day with
Okay.
the same boat. And the same boat was a big Hatteras. And he came back out. And the second day he says, "I guess you want me to," because we weren't going to get to the dock till like 1 a.m. So we passed the fish off. And Charlie had told us, he says, "You all like pina coladas?" And we said, "Sure." And he had brought a bag. We went to the grocery, he brought a bag of pineapples. And we had a blender. So on the way in, we didn't know if we'd won the tournament, because it wasn't like it is now with the satellite phones. And when we got ready to head in, that old boat, it was a beautiful day out in the middle of the Gulf. And we thought we'd done pretty good from listening to the VHF radio. But the boat had a fuel problem where the generator and the single 871 diesel wouldn't run at the same time because of some fuel issue. So we're by ourselves 70 miles out in the ocean, and Charlie says, "Stop the boat." And we're like, "Okay." He says, "I got to fire up the generator so we can operate the blender." We had a blender, electric blender. So we stopped the boat, fired up the blender, made a picture of margaritas, cut the generator back off, fired up the main engine, off we go. Every 15 miles, we had to stop the boat, start the generator, make a pie. When we got to the dock at 2 a.m, everybody was gone except the wives of the people in the charter, and we were 3 sheets to the wind. We got to the dock. First thing we said, "Well, did we win?" And everybody's like, "Yeah, you won," but everybody's long since gone. But Griff was going to have the margaritas out there in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And then we told our captains that it was a week-long tournament. And even though we were done in 2 days because we fished 6 long days, so Griff said, they gave us a generous share of prize money. And Griff said, "Let's go over and get a room at the Sheraton on the beach." So we called our captains, or we had already told them we're going to be gone.
You're supposed to be back here working.
Right. And it was in August, like it was a busy time. Yeah. And I told, and Sam was tough, and I was like, "I need a break." So we told him it was a week-long tournament.
Yeah.
Okay. And so Griff and I went over there, and this is the best part of the story. We were going to get a room, a double. Griff said, "Do you have a suite?" Right. They're like, "Yeah, it's the honeymoon suite, but it's like," and so we said, "We'll take it." So we got up there at the top of the Sheraton on Panama City Beach and stayed for 4 days and proceeded to spend all of the prize money that we had won. And part of the way we go out to the pool deck, and there's these cute little barmaids at a tiki hut, you know, and they would, the big sign, "Do not take chairs or drinks off of the pool deck." In other words, don't take them down on the beach. Griff said, "Don't listen to them." We grabbed 2 chairs. We waited out about, how the Gulf of Mexico is, it's real calm. We got out there about 20 yards off the beach and 2 feet of water, and he would snap his fingers like this. And the pool girls would bring us down Long Island iced teas, and Griff would give them $20 every time, in addition to the cost of the drink, $20. We had them serving drinks for us out. That was Charlie Griffin.
Yeah, that's but one of the many stories that you're going to hear on this special episode of the Captain Marty podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back with some more. This special edition of the Captain Marty podcast, all brought to you by Bayliss Boatworks in Wanchese.
What could possibly be more fun than watching a bottlenose dolphin swim and play in the water right beside you? Hop aboard Harbor Star Dolphin Tours at Wanchese Marina and witness this remarkable animal up close. The Harbor Star is a spacious 50-foot vessel with a wide, shady canopy that runs 2-hour trips multiple times a day, including a breathtaking sunset cruise. To book your tour, go online to wanchesemarina.com and click Harbor Star Dolphin Tours. See the majestic bottlenose dolphin up close with Harbor Star Dolphin Tours.
Hey y'all, Captain Marty here to tell you that when my friends are in the market for a new boat engine or repair, I send them to the best, and that's at Ratcliffe Marine in Belhaven. Ratcliffe Marine is your official Yamaha outboard dealer. Yamaha motors are designed to get you on the water fast and get you back to the dock whenever you're ready. Ratcliffe Marine is also the largest repower center in North Carolina. So when you're in the market for a new motor or need your Yamaha service, go to Ratcliffe Marine, 865 Highway 264 in Belhaven. Either one of you guys got a story you want to share? Even if you shared it recently, share it again with us if you can.
I got one.
All right, go ahead.
We got a lot.
We got a lot.
No doubt
And I
about
thought
it.
That's
this
my only
might
story.
happen that you hear a story and then
It reminds you.
it reminds you of other things. So, okay, so that one day in '84, I got the phone call. Parents in an accident. I gotta leave. I leave.
Yeah.
So you became captain of the Tar Heel immediately that day, and so everybody's life kind of changed. And Griff was helping you, I think, right away. So you guys basically kept that boat literally afloat physically and financially for a long time. And so I'm back there out west dealing with all that. And, we're pretty torn up over it. And, but anyway, I make visits back. And one of the planned visits was the old Oregon Inlet Billfish tournament that we used to have like third week of September. Yeah. So our good buddies, Ralph English, Mickey Hayes, probably Ken Farmer, Hardy, all those guys were on there. And it was Marty running the boat. I fly in kind of to just check out our house here, check out the boat, and I get to be a mate in the cockpit. Marty's running the boat. I'm not going to take it.
You could have demoted me, and I always thought,
hell
you did not do that.
No, I wouldn't do that. And so Griff had been on there all summer, and you guys were hot as a firecracker, and I just come in, and I'm like second mate. So this is great. So we go out there, and it's three really good friends with fishing with really good friends. And I think we were in decent position in the tournament. And, man, left long rigger, here comes this giant blue marlin. You remember that?
Oh, gosh.
And I can see him coming, and he's coming after a squid, and we're sitting there waiting on him. And he missed it one time, and then the second time right down the hatch. And now we got him on. And he's in the 800 to 1,000-pound range. This is going to win the tournament, and this is for all the marbles. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, this is incredible.
Didn't I bring you a flyer?
No, you brought me a flyer one time.
Oh, okay. This is a different big
We
fish.
had, man, you're rubbing nickels together back then. We had a straight,
especially with me as captain,
a 10-inch that was kind of rigged up. I think Billy Midget gave it to us.
I can't remember.
It was a straight 10-inch gaff, but it was barbless. And so that was tied off. They were both tied off the chair. We had a 18 or 19. It was a giant flyer, but it was double reinforced. It was a very big, heavy gaff. But I think our thought was get the first anything you can get in him and then hold on. So we fight this thing about 4 hours. We get the leader. It's on wire. That was a problem because I think we were on 15 wire.
And remember what was going on during the fight? I said, John, the temperature's going up on the engine.
Temperature's going up on the engine. We're like, okay. So I think, was it during the fight that we took the washdown hose? So we were losing coolant. We lost our coolant. So we took the washdown hose and put it in the top of the heat exchanger. So now we're cooling the engine with salt water. Not what you want. No. So we got that going on, and Marty's doing a freaking phenomenal job staying on this fish. Got Griff is going to be the wire man. I'm going to be the gaff man. All right, cool. We're going to get this thing. So we get the wire. Man, literally dozens of times, and we got to dump it. And we get it again, we got to dump it. And well, finally, the fish is paddling away from us, and I can see it right now. And Marty is backing down, and he's on the starboard side. And the fish literally is, Marty's got the boat just almost right over top of the fish. And there's the bill and the head, and they got all that white water there. And I took that 10-inch barbless gaff and shoved it down in the water as far as I could and pulled up, and I stuck him. Mm-hmm. And it's in about where his throat latch is. So Marty takes her out of gear. The fish cuts around to the port side.
I think that's correct.
And he's sitting there thrashing with that gaff. Well, one of the mistakes I think that we made was I made the mistake. I had the gaff around from the fighting chair, and it went around my backside and had me pinned against the fish box, because our fish box was kind of big, charter boat. So when that fish was over there on the port side, I was holding onto the rope and trying to pull him, and he's sitting there thrashing like crazy. And one of our anglers is standing there with the big double reinforced, and we are screaming, "Stick him, stick him!" And he was frozen. Remember that?
I do remember that.
He was frozen. It was an unbelievable experience, because I could see that giant fish sitting there just thrashing, and it was a difficult shot for anybody.
Yes.
And he's thrashing away, and all of a sudden that barbless gaff comes. It was a tuna gaff. It comes flying out, and Griff dumps the leader, and he goes, "Boys, I got a kink in the wire. There's a kink in the wire." Remember him screaming out?
Do.
And the fish goes off. We back off the drag, and then we play cat and mouse with that fish for the next 2 hours. And he finally broke the leader, and that was our big chance.
Yeah, and when that leader broke, I could see the fish down.
Yeah.
It wasn't very far under the boat, and he was pretty much dead. And when that leader broke, I just watched that fish go like this. I just watched it sink into the
He was just
depths.
paddling away real slow. We had him on the right rig. Well, at the time it was an 80, and we had the right guy on the pole.
And then we had to limp back to the dock, and we knew the motor was shot, and we got in on our own power. And that night, you remember we went to Owen's restaurant, and
got the
and
round
Billy
table.
Midget ended up winning that tournament that year. I believe it's correct. Remember when him and Murphy entered the tournament with their own money? Told the charter, "Well, we're charter fishing."
That was a 900-pounder.
And they caught one that was even
Up
bigger.
against, took it over to a trawl boat.
Right.
Remember to bang the boat up?
Yeah.
They didn't care.
The charter said, "Wow, you guys are really after the marlin on our charter." But we went to Owens that night, and then we had a long rebuild. But Griff and I had several opportunities. You put me over there one year. I think it was you put me over onto the Fighting Lady when they had a big one, and we handlined that thing for about 6 hours. And me and him were specialists at handlining. And he was you know what I said, when you take over a boat as a rookie captain, you need a good mate. You need someone that can handle it. And you know, John, when you said in the beginning I kept the boat afloat, I never heard you say I kept it afloat financially before. Are you sure?
Well, we were. I mean,
anybody,
you were running charter.
If you're an owner operator, you're doing well if you can tread water and kind of keep the payments up.
Yeah, you are.
So remember, at that time I had the commercial boat too.
Yeah.
So that one eventually went away. Billy Midget was running that, and I had to make a decision, which one was going to go, because we couldn't hold on to both. So Billy ran that one season, and I couldn't hang on to both. That one went away.
Because after I had fished with you on your old drop net boat, when all this happened,
that's when you swore
said,
off.
"Hey, Marty, you want to run the drop net boat for me too?" I was like, "No, thanks. I'm good."
It would really be pretty special if you could get collectively stories about the giant ones that got away.
Well, you're a good one.
I mean, really.
Your biggest was what, 958?
958.
Yeah. Now, Bubba, what about you? You got a Griff story you really like?
Oh, man. Well, one thing about Charlie, that he was like fish blood run through his veins. I mean, that man loved to fish, whether it was 50 miles offshore blue marlin fishing or trout fishing on the beach, as you all know. I mean, and he was good at it. One of the best. Surf fishing.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
offshore, you could always count on him being in the meet. And I told this at the little thing that we had. Well, it was a big thing. In fact, I heard the other day that somebody said the head count there was close to 700 people.
I was guessing it was better than 600.
That's
What
amazing.
we're talking about for people that don't know was the memorial service at Pirates Cove in the pavilion for both Charlie and Chad. One of the more incredible things I've ever been a part of. So.
Yeah, it was pretty special. I was the third person to speak at that thing, and Paul Spencer spoke first. And then Chip Schaefer spoke, and I sat there and I went, everything I was going to say went right out of my brain because I was going, well, when I walk up there, I'm going to say, I feel like I just stepped in the batter's box and Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle just got done. But
that's how I felt when I got on the Fighting Lady behind John Bayliss and Mike Bennett.
Yeah.
Oh, bro.
And Mike Bennett was at the service Sunday, and we had some.
Oh man, that was so cool for him to get up here. Yeah, but Charlie Griffin stories, Mike. Where do you start on that? I mean. And you know, a lot of people didn't know that Charlie loved to play golf.
Yes,
he loved to play golf, and he would always call me on the blow days, and we'd go up there to Seascape and play golf and have the biggest time.
That was the end of my golf career because of Charlie Griffin. We got kicked out because we flipped the golf cart down the sand dune one blow day. Anyway,
but there was one thing about old Charlie. He weren't bashful about taking a drink, but I guess none of us were.
And
back
we were all
in the day.
young, and it was, Griff was. Now I shared a story the other day about Griff. One thing about Griff, he was hard to wake up, really hard to wake up, and John, when we ran that Tar Heel, you know how we used to split up the nap.
Oh yeah, those are good. That's a good story.
Oh, I got a good one
The
about
captain
that.
would take the first nap, at least the way we did it, and then the mate would take. Again, we have a lot of listeners that might just not know what we're talking about. So back then it was roughly a 2-hour ride back to the dock. So the first hour, the mate gets everything squared away in the cockpit, climbs up on the bridge. So the captain says, "All right, I'm going to lay down." And
keep in mind now we're running pretty much back then. We were all running 7 days a week.
That's true.
Yeah.
And you're starting early and you're finishing late. The days seemed to me like they were really long back then because
That was better than 12-hour days.
Well, I remember
Every bit of that.
boats were slower.
Yeah.
And if you were getting sacked up, you might stay out there till 5 or 6, and then you got clean up, and also you chain a bunch of those together, and so 15 minutes made all the difference. You know, if you lay down for 15 minutes and
better.
you snap right back up, like, okay, I'm ready to go.
I mean, I remember coming from Hatteras where it was pretty laid back and getting on the Sundancer with Nevin Westcott, new boat payment. We went that first summer. We went 79 days in a row.
Yeah.
You know, and nowadays if you told
So that's kind of where the nap came from. It was almost traditional.
I would
that's
lay
the way it
down
was.
And take my nap, and I'd wake up, and then Griff would lay on that, what do you call it, bench, couch, whatever, on the bridge. And he had a little bit of a gut on him, and as the boat would be rocking, his T-shirt would creep up over his belly like that. And I'd say, I'd see the sea buoy coming. It's time for him to get up, get downstairs, get ready for docking. Well, wake up, Griff. I'd shake his foot. He wouldn't even budge. Wake up, Griff. I'd say a little bit louder, nothing. Shake him a little bit more. So finally, I was like, man, of course, I knew he'd been out hooting with the owls a lot of those nights, too. Nothing slowed him down. And so we had a Q-beam spotlight, 1,000,000 candle power.
Handheld.
On a cord, handheld. So I don't know where I got the idea. So I would just take that spotlight
I have no
and
idea
hold it,
where you got that idea.
and hold it on his belly, and the little hairs would start curling up a little bit, and then he'd start swatting at his belly like something's wrong, and then he'd wake up and I'd put that thing away and put it in the drawer real quick, just be driving. And he never did figure out that's how I woke him up.
We were all pranksters.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's just part of organelling. I mean, but this ain't a Griff story, but you reminded me of, I rode out with John one day. I can't remember if I didn't have a charter. I don't know if the motor was bad, whatever, and you were the mate. Mm-hmm. And on the way, and it was calm too, but on the way, and we used to take the squid and sew them up with kite string.
Yeah.
You'd buy the thing at the kite string, big old ball of it. Anyway, we're riding in, and John pulled that thing of kite string out of there. Marty was sound ass asleep. And we tied him up like Gulliver's Travels, like them Lilliputians did. I mean, we had kite string around his feet, his hands. Remember that, John?
Weren't we still fishing at the moment? We were still trolling when you did,
No,
or was
we
that
were
on the
riding
way
in. We were
On the
riding
way
in.
Okay.
Now you
were
can take
getting your
that
net.
kite string in your hand and pop it like this, but we used the whole spool. I mean the whole thing, buddy.
Looked like a spider had been crawling
By
over.
and by, John hollered something. What did you holler or
on
slow down or
fire.
something?
Snagged the console or hollered,
Yeah,
and then he's all
and
tied up.
When he woke up, buddy, he couldn't move. I swear, I think John and I laughed so hard we had tears in our eyes on that one. You were cussing.
Yeah. Coming up with One Boat Inc. and Outer Banks this week, I just wrote the best article I've ever written about Griff and Chad. And it's not about what happened. It's about them as men.
Mm-hmm.
So for some of our listeners, you'll be able to see that all around Dare County coming out shortly. In 2 weeks, I think, is when it's going to the printer. So you pick one of those up if you want to hear more about what we're talking about. Yeah. But Griff, he liked his share of pranks too. But anything else, John? You got something else you want to share?
Well, a good story about him because basically it was almost 2 years, and we came back, and again, you talk about rubbing nickels together. We're coming back. Tar Heel's got the boat payments and all, and we're like, I have got to make a living doing something. You were making the transition to your boat, reeling, I think, at the time, and Griff was still.
And I was
on
partnered with the same guy that didn't use the gaff.
Right. We didn't talk about that. And so we came back, and it was like April, and I said, we got to get going. We got to get something rolling here. We got to go commercial fishing or something. So we had Chris Hall had come out from California. And we didn't have electromates. We didn't have any electric reels. And I said, man, check with Willie Etheridge. I said, would you be willing to, buy some yellowfins if we catch some? Yeah, we're not selling a lot of them, but yeah, we'd buy some. So we go down there southeast the tower in the spring, hit the blue water. You don't have any water shots or anything, so we just take a whim. We go down there, and me, Griff, and Chris Hall. And we go running down there, and, man, the water's way inside. So we said, okay, first thing you do, you're going to go back up to the northeast, and we wall our way up there, and we catch one little tuna, and I think we caught a mako, and like, man, we ain't even covered our fuel yet. And we got up to the point, and that's where the water was crossing the 100, and that's when those, 20 to 30 pounders, springtime, bam, there's 6 of them on. And Griff's cranking them by hand. I got a couple on the ridge. I'm cranking them by hand. And then anything free, Chris Hall's cranking. Mm-hmm. So he became our electric reel. And
he's from California. He wouldn't know any better.
He was just happy to be there. And he had that reel, all right, guide the line on, just the basic stuff. And these tunas he's kicking his ass. So we caught like, I don't know, 15 or 20, but we made a little something. We got in. All we had to do was gut them, and Will was paying us like $2 a pound for them. Like, So we got geared up a little bit more, and we went back. So we went through. We finally made enough money to get a couple electromates, but Charlie was willing to stick it out. We knew every fish we were going to have to crank in by hand, and then it got better and better, and they started biting really good, and we kind of got in on the front end of that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But he was willing to hang in there, and we were really rolling the dice, and he was all in,
Well, one of the things,
and making us laugh the whole time.
You're the point.
Great sense of humor.
Both me and Bogan at the same time. His personality, as far as covering your bases on the Tar Heel when I got moved up to captain, man, people love him, and he built so many. He was just so fun loving and never. And you know what, Mike, at that service center, remember when Britton was talking about working on the electronics trick when you're dead tired and there's no fish biting, and either the captain or the mate at 1 o'clock in the afternoon will climb up under the console to hide and catch a 15. John, I don't know if you ever did that. But then when the charter would say, "Where's the captain?" Griff would say, "He's fixing the electronics." And I'd be up on it. Griff invented that. That was his thing. And then he would say, "Hey, I got to fix the electronics."
I don't think you could have been around him for 1 minute and he would have you laughing.
He would have you laughing.
I don't care where you were. You could walk into Sam and Omi's. hey, man.
Yeah.
And you'd come over there, and he'd have you laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was getting bigger, and I
He
saw
was
him. He
getting
was
big.
over there. We'd be running a boat, and he go, "Hey man, come over here." He says, "You proud of me? Look at me." And I'm like, "What, Griff?" And he says, "Look at me, I beat it." And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And he's getting up there in weight. He says, "Anorexia, I beat the shit." I'm like, what are you gonna do? I mean, you just start laughing.
Oh my
And sorry about that, Justin, but that was a quote. Now, but then he'd sling me a bag of tuna that he had. And
he was the givingest man there ever was.
It just killed me.
And you know what a lot of people forgot about, because he and I, a while back, my house in Englehart, my heat pump just was not warming up enough. You know, in the wintertime, heat pumps when it gets really cold don't do a great job. So he says, I got a heater for you, and I'm like, well, I got a space heater, I could supplement my heat. And he drove over there with this real high-tech heater. And it's something he paid $300 or $400 for. And I said, Griff, I can't. Don't you need it? He said, no, I don't need it. I did need it at one time. I got something different, and I take it. And he brought it over there to me, which I thought was. And when he did, he brought a bag of fish over there, all the way to Englehart, now an hour drive.
Yeah.
But a lot of people forget that last summer, do you remember, Griff was in the hospital having a knee replacement, and they had him opened up and were getting ready to take out his old knee, and he coded on the table. And it took 20 minutes to bring him back to life, and 20 minutes of CPR, which broke most of his ribs and all that stuff. And they brought him back. But if anybody ever could roll off of something like that and then keep right on rolling, it was Charlie Griffin, because once he recuperated physically, he was ready, set, go.
Ready to rumble.
Ready to rumble.
He told me, he said that when he come to, they were all standing around the bed, and they said they told him what happened. And he said, well, gosh, thank you all. And he said the doctors pointed at this little girl. He said, boy, she was beautiful. Weighed about 115 pounds at the most. Said, you need to thank her. She's the one that sat on top of you and got you back.
I can't imagine. He probably didn't miss a comeback to that either. But
I cannot remember exactly what it was that he said to her, but it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Griff and I had a really, really. I mean, I got him into his first three-piece Farrah leisure suit, as I spoke about at the memorial, to go discoing. And he had come down, and this will be my last thing I can share. But he came, Ronnie Cavanaugh and Dave Watkins. I was down on my property I bought as a junior in high school with money I made fishing on headboats, the one where John said, Marty, I think you need to come back to North Carolina, which changed my whole life path, actually. But they wanted to come down to look at commercial king mackerel fishing, which was a big bunch of not truth. That's a kind way of saying it. They wanted to come down and cruise around Daytona Beach and party, and he brought his three-piece leisure suit with him. So the first night he was there, we lived out by I-95 in the Orange Grove country, and we were going out. We put on our leisure suits, or he did. I didn't have mine at that time. And he had the whole thing, platform shoes, ruffled vest,
Jeez.
and he had that blonde curly hair, and he said, we said, before we go up into town 20 miles away, let's go get you some oranges to take back to North Carolina. And he's like, is there a market open? No, we don't need no market. We'll just go get some, like people around here do with watermelons in a field at night, So he said, oh, yeah. And my brother-in-law, Sam Frazier, I had a window van. He had a blind business. And Griff said, well, I'm just going to watch. So in the back of the van was me and Ronnie Cavanaugh and Dave Watkins. And then in the front, my brother-in-law, Sam, was driving. And Griff was riding shotgun. He was the lookout, So we drive down there, and we were really having a lot of fun. And when we got down there, he said, so what do y'all do? And we had these bags. And he said, well, when he stops, we're going to jump and run out into that grapefruit grove right there and get some grapefruit. You just ride with Sam. And then when y'all go down the state road and under the interstate, turn around. When you come back, flash your lights, and we'll know to come running out of the grove. So Dave Watkins and Cavanaugh were like, this is going to be fun, Well, they stopped. We jumped out. Griff's sitting there in his 3-piece leisure suit, like, oh, this is so fun. And then we had just a second. I said, Cavi, now make sure you jump hard, because that ditch is wider than you think. And it was like a good old Hyde County ditch, So we got to run and start down. And meanwhile, they're going on down the road. So we got nice 1, 2, 3, go. We ran. We jumped as far as we could, and we made it. So we're over there filling up bags with really ruby red, pink grapefruit. We always told the best, So, so the brake lights come on the van. It hadn't gone very far at all down the road, and we're like, uh-oh, something's wrong. Then the backup lights come on, and Griff, after we jumped out, told Sam, I want to do that. I want to do it too. So they back up, and luckily there's no other cars on the road. And we're like one row of trees in the dark, no flashlights or anything. And we see the van back up. Then the door opens, and here comes Griff running down the bank in his 3-piece fair leisure suit. Well, that ditch was covered in pond scum, Bubble, algae. Green. And in the moonlight, it looked like solid ground, And Griff comes running down the bank and thinks he's going to run across a dry ditch and go and runs right down to his chest. In the water wearing his suit. So we didn't know anything to do but to bombard him with ruby red grapefruit while he was in the water. He got so mad with us. And that was the last time he ever wore his 3-piece leisure suit. So,
I'd leave her right there.
Yeah. He was a great guy. We're going to miss him a lot.
He will be missed, Captain Marty. That is for sure. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the captain's final thoughts, another story or two here, the special edition of the Captain Marty podcast, all brought to you by Bayliss Boatworks right here in Wanchese.
Join the crew of the Miss Oregon Inlet 2 for an Outer Banks fishing trip that's fun for the whole family. Located at the Oregon Inlet Fishing Center and running 3 trips a day, their spacious 60-foot headboat can accommodate up to 65 people. The Miss Oregon Inlet 2 crew can get you all rigged up to catch a variety of fish in the ocean and the Sound, but they're famously known as the Flounder Pounder. For more information on how you can hop aboard, go online to MissOregonInlet.com. The Miss Oregon Inlet 2, an Outer Banks experience that's sure to create a lifetime of memories.
I don't know. I'd be telling a story if I didn't say I thought about him every day. But there's a lot of, in a week, I think about him quite a bit.
Yeah.
When we played golf. And, he always knew about fishing.
Yeah.
And I got to tell this on him because it's a good one. But John was going to Costa Rica, and he called me and said, can you run the boat for me for a couple of days? I said, sure. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I was going with Paul.
Paul Spencer.
Yep.
So he calls me up the night before. They're leaving the next day. He calls me that night and he goes, all right now, Bubble, don't be thinking you're going marlin fishing today now. The east-west score was 1-0. There's no marlins around, so just make the best out of it that you can. I said, okay. I get down there in the morning and get in the boat ready, and I'm starting over to the fishing center. Who do I run into but old Griff? And he's high-stepping. He said, Bubble, you got to come down the beach with me. I said, what? He goes, them boys in Hatteras, they found him yesterday. You got to come down the beach. I said, okay, I'm right behind you. Got down there, but it was game on. Matt Huth was the mate.
Yeah.
Matt Huth was the mate. Anyway, we had a pretty darn good day, and the weather run us out of there at lunchtime, 11:30. We were having to come home. It was bad. And I didn't find out until a few days later or whenever it was, but John called home that evening, and Hilda answered the phone. He goes, did you hear how Bubble did today? And I think this is true. I'm not sure, but I think she said, are you sitting down?
I thought she was messing with me.
It was pretty good.
How many
Paul
did you
and I
catch?
thought it was like 92 or 93. We were Paul and I. We were getting on the plane together to go fish with Tim in Flamingo in Costa Rica.
Right.
That's like when it was first starting. So Bubba Carter was down there, Lagrone was down there, and they were at just this little dock. And Tim said, you got to come down here and try this. And the East-West count was 1-0.
Yeah.
And Paul and I remember we were driving to the airport, and we were like, I am so glad to be getting out of here. We are going to go to Costa Rica, and we're going to see some fish finally and really go do some marlin fishing. I'm over this place. And then here we go.
Yeah.
We get that phone call that night. Like, Paul and I look at each other like,
It was a double grand slam plus an extra, I think.
oh, yeah.
Real quick, gentlemen, for those that don't know, what is the East-West? You said West was winning 1-0. What exactly do you
Well, that's
mean?
the long-standing tournament. It started at Oregon Inlet, and you'd have the boats tied up on the east side and the boats tied up on the west side. I'm sure that's how it started.
It is, yeah.
And it started that way. Go ahead, Bubba.
No, I mean, that's how it started. It was, and then one day they started figuring there was some better talent on one side or the other, so they said, maybe we should have captains. And that way you had a captain on the east side, a captain on the west side.
And every day
they'd take turns
2:30,
picking. Yeah.
You would count up your marlin, and one sail, one white, one blue marlin, they all counted the same back then.
Yeah.
It was just, okay, Bill Fisher's got 5 white marlin and a blue marlin. Okay, that's 6, and and then so on. And so they would total up the teams, and at the end of the season, the winning team would get a banquet put on by the losers. So it was a big throwdown thing with, prizes, and they'd introduce the captain of the year that was voted on by the guys together, and the mate of the year, and then there'd be a bunch of prank, awards, but it was fun,
It was. I tell you what, in my personal opinion, you could take all the tournaments, the Masters tournament, the White Marlin Open, whatever. That East-West was probably more important to all of us than any of those other things.
Absolutely.
You could go up and win one of them things, but to be on the winning team, you go to the Seafair, and everybody dressed up, and it's still going on today.
Yep.
It's
those memories, especially at the Seafair, those were some good ones. I got so many stories about that, but I want to end with this. You might right now, John. You got boats to build here. You're working. Bubblegum, you got dogs to pet. I don't know what I got to do. I go see my granddaughter.
I do have a boat to take care of. I've just left over there.
Yeah. So, do you remember? This is a really good story about Griff. This will really say a lot about Charlie Griffin. But when I was on the Fighting Lady, it was a Buddy Davis boat, a brand new. You remember the Buddy Davis boat that Skookie Sproul was a part owner in, and all that. And they, and every year, once a year, when I was the mate on there, Sam would do an overnight trip with Lance Newman, Karen, Charlie Griffin, and Charlie, who was down the dock on the Honey. He would take a day off and come on board for that trip. And so we would go out, and the first day I remember we caught 11 white marlin, all on 50 internationals, pretty good day. And then, and of course, Charlie's mom brought all this great food, and Lance Newman, he was a hoot in himself. It was just such a privilege to, do that. But Sam Stokes, who I love dearly, Sam could be tough on you at times. He was kind of no nonsense. Come on. He was a bit, I think the term screamer was invented because of him.
That's another podcast. Maybe I'll have some stories.
That's why John has hard hearing right now.
And again, I was following in John's footsteps, but we went on this overnighter. We fished all day, caught 11 whites. Then we picked up and steamed 20 more miles offshore, set out the baits. And Griff, rig. We got to have swordfish baits. We're going to swordfish. Stop the boat, fish down deep. So, of course, everybody's pumped up to do that for about an hour, and then you catch a shark or two, and the novelty of it sort of wore off, and everybody had been up all day long. Everybody had been having food and cocktails. Everybody's getting sleepy. So Griff and I are back to rigging. First, Lance and his wife and Karen and Charlie, they all went down to staterooms, went to bed. So Sam comes out there, and me and Griff are rigging baits, and we got a couple baits over the side doing nothing. Sam said, all right, boys. And you know how he would say, all right, boys, somebody's got to stay up tonight. We got to have somebody on watch. And I don't know how you guys want to do it, but there's 3 of us. So you all can separate it, or you can do it together, but you want to take the first watch or what? And we said, we'll take the first watch because we had baits overboard. We'll fish. You go on, Sam. Go on down below and go get some sleep.
He didn't argue.
He did not argue. He went on down below, and he goes to sleep. And me and Griff, we get bored with fishing, so then we climb up on the flying bridge. And Griff is sitting in the captain's chair, and I was sitting over on the bench. I said, well, there's no sense both of us being up. I said, how about one of us take a nap? Why, we'll steal a bonus nap. Griff said, well, I'm fishing. You go to sleep. So I lay down on that couch upstairs, beautiful night, sea breeze blowing. I go to sleep. Sam and everybody else is down below, sound asleep. So anyway, all of a sudden, a bright light shines in my face, and a shotgun is pointed directly at me, and I'm like, it just caught me so off guard. And I look over there, and Griff is in the pilot's chair, and the Coast Guard is on our boat. And they had, the Point Brown was out there, and they did everything, cut off all their lights, and rowed an inflatable skiff over to us, thinking this is unusual for a boat to be out here in those days, be out here where they're probably checking for smugglers. They did what they call the silent approach with no motor. They just paddle real quietly like the Navy SEALs do. Climbed on the boat. Griff is sound asleep in the pilot's chair with his feet on the steering wheel. And the Coast Guard got on our boat, 4 of them with shotguns, climbed up the flying bridge and woke me and Griff up right there. And so Griff woke up like, whoa. I said, Griff, you're supposed to be on watch. We let our boat get boarded while we were on watch. And anyway, so you know what happens then. They go through the whole boat. And they wake up
Hopefully
Sam.
they didn't wake up Sam.
Oh, no, they woke up Sam, and Sam was not happy. And anyway, he had to get all the paperwork out. And after they got through all that, and when we're still up on the bridge, Sam climbs up there, and we're like, Sam, we won't do that again. We'll stay awake. He said, never mind. I'll take over. And he stayed up the rest of the night. Anyway, you guys, I know we've run a little long, but any final thoughts you'd like to add at all?
I think the one thing, Charlie or Chad, when we got the phone call that Charlie and Chad were missing, I'm like, well, that absolutely can't be. Mike, I felt like, there is no way that that's even possible. And then, the suspicions of, maybe something happened in the inlet. And I was thinking all the times that Charlie had been fishing offshore by himself. I assumed that he'd be the guy running the boat, and I could easily see myself in the same position with a boat and squaring up with the sea and saying, look, we got this, I've done this a lot of times, we're fine. And, if I had to draw any conclusion, I would say it would be just, who knows if he was on one engine. Mm-hmm. We knew that already. What if that other engine cut off? That the one that he had in a twin engine boat
with one of them working, it's not a very maneuverable.
A tiny little rudder, and she gets on a run, and there you go. But I think he would say, to all of us, he would be one of the last guys I would ever suspect that would be in a situation like that. And I think he would say, boys, we've had a good run, but always cross your T's and dot your I's and, plan for the unexpected. I don't know. And I think he would say that to us just as because we are all such tight friends. And that's a big loss with Charlie. Mm-hmm. And he's, really one of the main guys around here. And it just really took us all by surprise that could even happen. And that place, how many times, Mike, Marty, have we come up there with a little bit of an egg in your throat?
The old pucker factor.
Yeah.
Remember? I mean, that's what we always say.
And you hear those things, they're coming up behind you and they're hissing. You're sitting there out of gear and your charter's like, hey, we good? And, oh, yeah, we're good. And, or a boatload of fish, which he's done,
on a small boat, by himself
hundreds
sometimes.
of times, hundreds of times, and those you're set up for problems, with something like that, and just that, God darn,
John,
I just wish we could get it back.
You remember I was running the Paul Mann-built Tar Heel in the dead of winter for you one year, just a one-day deal, and we come up to the bar, holler breakers, and that day a very experienced commercial fisherman behind me, Carter. On his drop netter, that boat.
That was it.
They rolled over. They were in survival suits, and they drifted back out the inlet. And Tony Tillett picked them up, but that boat was never seen again. Yeah. I mean, it happens. And I do. When Charlie Dunn, when I was writing that article, said a quote. I shared it at the service that day. He said, "When our son signed up for this line of work, when he signed that contract, there was no guarantees that he would always come back. And now he's not talking about a paper contract. He's talking about all of us that make our living on the sea. Bubblegum, you've had, your own share of experiences.
If you spend enough time out there, you're going to have an experience.
Sooner or later, you're going to have an
those
experience.
that have or those that will. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a bad thing.
Mother
By
Nature
the grace
has
of
no
God,
conscience.
we make it, you know, but
I like to make myself feel better by thinking that God was looking at a lot of the old timers from Morgan Inlet that are up there now, and maybe they needed a little bit of picking up, a little bit of laughter, a little bit of character in that ocean that I hope he's got for all of us to fish in.
Yeah.
he would be the best selection.
Yes, he would.
As I often say, I always use the term the great grass line in the sky, because Omi used to always refer to, he sometimes would say, man, this is just what heaven's going to be like. He'd pull up the big bed of grass. And so I got that term, and I've used it for many years on my radio show. But yeah, the great grass line in the sky, Griff, he'd be pulled up there right now with a box full of dolphin and a blue marlin trying to eat a bale or
He'd
whole.
be squalling, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing all these great stories. It's definitely paying a great tribute to life well lived, it sounds like. You guys could go on for hours and hours, and we could do another whole segment with just things that y'all have done yourselves offshore. But doing this today for Charlie Griffin has been very admirable for you all to be willing to do this. So we really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Again, as a special edition of the Captain Marty podcast, tribute to Charlie Griffin. Want to thank one more time Captain Marty, Captain John Bayliss, and Captain Mike Merritt for taking time out of their day to pay this tribute to such a legendary captain that everyone loved so very much with the Oregon Inlet fleet and just fishing all around the Outer Banks and other places as well. Definitely touched a lot of lives, and he's sorely going to be missed. I had the honor of being able to interview him last year when he was captain of the Harbor Star out of Wanchese Marina doing the dolphin tours. And let me tell you, the man smiled the entire time he sat in the studio. The entire time. The man was always smiling. I never saw him without a smile on his face. Ever. Definitely a loss that shook the community, but he has a legacy that lives on, and we hope that it'll carry on through his son Jake and others that remember him for being just who he was. So thank those gentlemen one more time. Again, a special edition of the Cap Marty podcast, all brought to you by Bayliss Boatworks in Wanchese.